What most people get wrong about state?
I think people think entering flow feels like you feel happy, you feel like the usual kind of emotions we feel as humans, but actually when you enter flow, your ego disappears. So this means you won't feel happy, you won't feel good in this traditional way, because flow is by definition getting so immersed into something that you even forget that the rest of the world exists. So the thing people get wrong, I think, is they think it's just focusing on something or just feeling proud. Most people think when they are in flow, they will feel proud about their work. But it's actually the opposite. You will feel proud after having finished, your flow time, because when you're in flow, you're so immersed into the activity. What I like to say is you don't only focus on the activity, you literally become the activity, which means you won't feel proud in the traditional way, if this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And do you need to focus first to get into flow state, or is it just two separate things?
You absolutely do need to focus, but I would say flow is simply a level above focus. You start by, one of the things you need to enter a flow state is obviously having a clear task, something you need to do and making it very clear. But then you might enter a deep work state, a state where you're focused, but it's not necessarily gonna be flow state, because in a flow state you have this all other dimension of just immersion. So first you have focus, and then if you train yourself if you design your environment in such a way, you might be able to enter a flow state.
How can people can they change their environment so they can better enter the flow?
I think you have two opposite ways to do so. Like the first one is having a specific environment you use every time in order for you to enter flow. And in this case, what you will try to do is not adding stuff to this environment, but removing so much that the only thing left in this environment is the task you have to do. And in this case, flow will be a lot easier. For example, in the room I am right now, what I do to just optimize it in a way where I can enter flow much more easily is I keep the phone out of the room. It's like 99% of the time my phone doesn't even enter this room, because this room is devoted to focus and just sleep, because there's a bed behind me, but outside of that, nothing. So you only keep in your room what you need for the task, which might be a laptop, a book, a paper, just the fundamentals, and then the rest has to stay out of the room, even people if you need. And this is one way. So the first way is just removing so much that your mind has no other option but focusing. But since flow is not just about, you can enter flow like when you're working, but you can do it while running, while doing literally anything. And so in these other cases, you paradoxically benefit from having an environment full of stimuli, which they might be distractions, but in some way our mind can still enter flow in environments that are full of stimuli, because in this case, for example, if you're mountaineering, very easy to enter flow because it's an activity where you absolutely need your full attention. You don't need to think about yourself, you need to think about the environment and all the things around you, because if you don't do so, you might run in danger. You might encounter dangers in the activity itself. So there are these two opposite ways of thinking about environment in a flow state. Either you remove so much that focus becomes the only choice, or you go in places that are even more stimulating than you would need, and then your mind has to do the job of just focusing on what is important in the moment.
Yeah, great. I think when you mentioned the bed, it kind of reminded me of this like productivity hack, I guess, or sleeping hack, that you only sleep in your bed, you don't eat in your bed, you don't look at your phone in your bed, you just sleep there, and then your mind kind of starts to get used to it, and this is the time for sleeping, and this is where we sleep, so we are going to sleep. and it reminded me of that. And with even sports and other stuff, is there a way people can enter into flow state with tasks that they didn't like or they really don't want to do, but they actually just want to pass the time, so they just have it just done as fast as possible?
Yeah, this is actually a hard one because, I work with people on that, and, if you like the task, entering a flow, I have to just be honest, it's so much easier. Like, you can't even make comparisons about it. I'm not gonna lie, because, I have experienced this too, and everyone can experience this. I would say the only real way, like if you actually hate doing something, but you wanna enter a flow state, you have a disadvantage, because one of the key motivators, one of the key causes of flow state is intrinsic motivation, which means motivation that comes from the inside. So for example, if you hate studying math and you just want to enter a flow state, you start from a disadvantage because you don't have intrinsic motivation, you have extrinsic motivation, meaning you just want to pass the test, you don't really feel connected to it. So you start from a bad place for sure, but I would say the best way, in case you hate doing something, to enter a flow state is to increase the pressure. Not too much, but if you increase the pressure that you feel, your mind will feel the need to actually enter a state of deeper focus. What I mean is just like, if we are talking about studying math and you don't like it, if you start studying math weeks before a test, you don't feel a lot of pressure, so it's gonna be a bit hard to actually feel the pressure, and so you will have to inject it a little bit of pressure, because in order for you to enter flow, you need a balance between skill level and challenge level. So if the challenge is too hard, you get overwhelmed. If the challenge is harder than your skill set is actually capable of, you will feel overwhelmed. On the other hand, if it's too easy, you will feel boredom. So I would say, if you don't actually like doing something, make sure you are in this sweet spot. Like, if you feel the pressure of the test coming, and you don't overdo it, meaning I don't say start studying the day before, but like you have to inject a little bit of pressure so that your mind will feel the need to actually focus in a much more profound way, if this makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And with that, do you think, is there a way to maybe even make those hard tasks more enjoyable? Because you said there's a way that you increase the pressure of it, and that's better to get into flow state, but maybe there is a way to make those not enjoyable tasks and those tasks that you hate more enjoyable, so maybe even that can be easier. Do you know any ways with that? Or
yeah, talking about this, I would say, just like I was saying before, like, in order for you to enter flow, you need intrinsic motivation. And so what I would say is, if you don't like doing something, it's probably because you haven't cultivated a sort of intrinsic motivation in the activity. So one thing you could do is, like, if you don't like math, it might be for many reasons, but for example, it might simply be because you had bad experiences in class, like you were made fun of, I don't know, stuff like that. So in this case, you just need to change your focus when you're actually doing the thing. Like, you might go from doing it in order to achieve something specific, or trying to actually enjoy the process, like going from not understanding anything about it and then actually caring about the process of understanding, not for a specific reason, not even for the test, but just because you feel the need to understand it yourself internally. And in this case, I think switching from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation might make it more enjoyable. The only thing is, it's actually very hard to do, because for some people, they have got used to, have an extrinsic motivation in certain activities for so many years that they don't even realize that they are in an extrinsic motivation scenario. And so when I work with people, it's a very slow process, this of changing from an I guess it's the only actual way to make it more enjoyable.
Okay. Other example I remembered it could be that you think you will not use it in real life, especially when you're learning some subjects. But that in that perspective can change, I think, really easily. At least it changed for me. Or you, exactly as you said, you change the focus of what you're doing when you're learning the subject. So I think that can be a really good way to make it more enjoyable. Okay, so what do you think is the most effective way how to get rid of distractions? In the sense that, even in general sense, that there's too much noise out there, and in the sense that I need to do this task, I need to just get rid of my phone and.
The way I go about distractions is usually I think it's way harder to resist distractions than to actually prevent them in the first place. So this basically means most people just are so unaware of the way they work that they will start working with their phone next to them. But the thing is, once you have the phone or the distractions next to you, it's really hard to resist them. Like if you have the phone next to you and the notification comes up, you just pick up the phone and you have ruined your focus. Instead, if you, before you start working, you put it outside of the room, you put it in a place that is far away from where you're working, you won't even have it in your mind. Like when you actually enter the flow state or a state of focus in general, you won't think about the phone because you're just caring about the task. And then you can apply this for literally anything. Like if you prevent distractions, you will have a much easier time than to resist them once they are already there. So you need to design your environment and your whole life in a way where you don't even see them in the first place, and you only see them once you have finished creating what you had to create. And the second way is just designing your days on a more of a routine level. Like I try to, at least personally, to every day I wake up and I try to not use my phone at least for 1 hour, so that I won't just bombard my brain with random stuff, random information, and I will be able to actually create something to not just absorb information passively, one in the moment when my mind is more pure, more untouched by reality. So I think everyone should benefit from this, like waking up and taking advantage of the fact that in the morning you haven't seen anything, and so your mind is ready to create, to produce something, to work on something. It doesn't have to be long, but if you just start your days in this way, I think you have almost solved the distractions problem. Like you might consume later in the day, and then it will make more sense for you because you have already done what you had to create. And then once you absorb information, it's gonna improve the quality of your thinking, and then you will create even better the day after. And the other thing is, like, I don't believe in being a monk about distractions, about consuming. Like you don't need to stop consuming, you don't need to get out of social media, because you can get a ton of amazing stuff. Like we wouldn't be recording this without social media. We would know half of the things we know if we hadn't social media. So I think it's just about deciding in which time of the day do you want to consume and in which time of the day do you want to create. Obviously the priority is creating, because if you consume and you don't create, then it doesn't make sense. But I think consuming becomes a distraction only when you haven't created before.
Makes sense. And actually, I've heard for most people the best time when they create is early in the day or just late at night. And for me personally, it is like that too. In the middle of the day, I'm basically useless, I think. So that's most of it. And with the distraction, even so many people just want to work, want to create, but even want to put their phone away, but they are just like, nah, I will do it later, or they will say I will change, and they will not really change, and they will fall back into the same loop. Do you have some advice on that, or do you have some something that maybe could explain it, that we didn't learn and we didn't change from it?
Yeah. Okay. For example, like with the example of the phone, I would say you keep entering this kind of loops because you don't have enough proof, I think, for yourself about the thing you're trying to change on. Like for example, if you've never tried this, like putting the phone outside of the room, you are starting a habit, but you have no proof for the habit. Meaning, it's literally it's not contained in your identity. It's not part of you. It's something a guy online recommended. I just recommended, or you recommended, and so it doesn't make sense for you. It's not part of you. So what I'd say is, you might even start working less hours, like in terms of time, but you try to do this every single time, and you start just with little bursts of work. You say, like, it's very hard to change from in a day a habit like this one. Like I have needed months as well to change this in my life, because once I worked with my phone next to me, and the change was phenomenal, but it took a lot of time. And the way I think about it is just, today I'm gonna work for 30 minutes, and in these 30 minutes, not like hours, I'm gonna put the phone away. And then you do it for a week. It doesn't cost that much, because everyone can do 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes, just like how much you can do. And then you will have proof for this habit, and it will become ingrained in your identity. Then once you have it in your identity, it will be so much easier to actually continue this and to keep it, to put it to a higher level. But like, I think the biggest problem with change is you see it as some random advice, and you don't deeply resonate with it on an emotional level. And another thing I will say about this is, like, I once remember watching a Modern Wisdom episode of the podcast, and they were talking about the fact, like, it's easier to change when your life is really bad than when your life is like average. Because if your life is average, you don't feel a very strong need. Like, I mean, if you have a job, if you have some friends, if your life is decent but it's not great, you might be doing well, better than this, but your life is not bad, you don't feel a strong need to change, to be fair. But like, if instead you come from a very poor family, and you have no friends, your life is very bad, and you objectively feel bad about it, you know, the feeling, the need of change will feel a lot bigger. Like, I don't mean that everyone who is experiencing a very bad life will change, but I will say, if your life is average, you need to kind of make it sound more emotionally relevant to you, like the need of change. You need to start reminding yourself that you could be living a lot better. And this is not to say that you shouldn't be grateful for where you are, because I think this is foolish to not appreciate what you already have. But like, if you don't paint it in an emotional way, your brain won't change. Like, we only change when we really feel the need to change, because on a scientific level, we are creatures that try to save energies the more we can. So change takes a lot of energies.
I think it does. And yes, I heard that quote from Chris Williamson, and kind of reminds me of another one with Naval, that most people, that there are people that have been in worst situations but done it better than you, and maybe faster. And it may be connected that, yeah, you're average, like, you, of course it's not easy, it is hard, but there were people that had it worse than you, and maybe because they had it worse than you, they did it faster and better because they had better motivations for it. And I think even with it, that's making it more appealing, that can be that if you don't do it, or if it doesn't happen, like, how much pain it would be in, like, kind of not just only chase, but to be kind of pushed by it, or pulled by it. That can be a good way too. And yeah, agreed. And with that, I want to get into more of a hustle culture, and what do you think about it? Why it works, why it doesn't work?
I think hustle culture comes from, a pretty rational approach technically, because like you say, I'm gonna work more, I'm gonna, put more hours, so this should mean that I achieve more. And this makes sense, I think, in a short term and like for short periods of time, because like I'm not saying that if you work more you don't achieve more. It obviously works like that, but it doesn't consider a couple of things. The first one is from just like a very scientific, neuroscientific approach. If you say I'm gonna work more, but then you start losing sleep, you start losing, even workouts, you start losing social time. We know from science that all of these three things make motivation and even discipline so much easier. And if we know this, why would you be so foolish to completely ignore those for long periods of time? I'm not saying like if you have a week or two where you need to sleep a little bit less or to sacrifice something, this is fine because you might have more volume to do. But on a long-term perspective, hustle culture literally doesn't make sense, because it literally promises you to a better life, but in the process, not only in the process, because you will never stop it. If you actually believe in hustle culture, even when you achieve, you keep hustling. And then it doesn't make sense because you never feel happy, you never feel grateful, you never feel alive, you feel lonely. And this can be fine for short periods of time, but humans are not designed to live alone, frustrated, always tired, just for achieving a bigger house or a faster car. These all make sense. You can desire whatever you like, but like the hustle culture approach only makes sense for short periods of time. And the other thing that hustle culture does not take care of is like people say that if you put more volume, you will automatically achieve more, but this is not how it works. And this is also what Naval says, like when he talks about leverage and this kind of stuff. Like if working harder was the secret to actually achieve more, to get more money, to just achieve more in even in the more materialistic way, people working physical job, hard jobs, they would be rich, like, but it's not how it works. People who are starting a business online, who are starting to do something like we do, it doesn't mean anything that you work 10 hours a day. Like if you're doing it in the wrong direction, in the wrong activities, it doesn't make sense. The hours do not make sense. So I would say if you want to hustle, you can hustle, but just for short periods of time first. And second, I would say if you are putting your hours on stuff that doesn't actually bring you results, then it won't make sense, because you might like it and that's fair, but if you expect to achieve something from your work, don't automatically think that adding more hours will make you achieve more. It's way more subtle than this. Like if you record videos, but like you see that this format doesn't work on YouTube, like for example, I've noticed this too. Some type of formats don't work in my case, and so I stopped doing them, because like even if I enjoy recording them, the goal of the channel is to bring people to make my message clear to people. And why would I be so arrogant to keep doing something just because I think volume will cure it?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with your perspective on this, because most people would say that no, you don't need to hustle, you just need to work like 1 hour a day and you will become a millionaire, especially in those videos. But even when I was like watching this, listening to podcast called Founders, most of those people, like who are successful and who have this, just build an empire, or how would you say it, their work, they were in those hustle moments and they worked really hard for it. But most of those get rich quick and work just 1 hour a day, and in 2 weeks you will become a millionaire. Probably, yeah, those people had money, but for how long? It is like how I realized is that the only people that actually stayed or are making money are only doing those courses, and those who actually made money from the actual thing they don't just they will not have their money, or they will not do this for a very long time. And actually, I think it has to do something with the purpose, purpose thing. And with that, you said that yes, if working hard was the thing to getting rich, then those who work 10 hours a day on some building some houses would be the richest, but they are not. So you need to pick what's important to work on, and how can people pick that? How can people focus on what really matters?
I think it largely depends on what you value as important, but I would say that the right approach is like making it the more complete you can. Like, if you need to both consider passion and external results. Like, if you start something and you both like it, but you also want results from it, you will choose what is important to you, making a balance between the two. Like, because not everything about what you do has to be, you don't need to be passionate about everything you do, but you need a tiny bit of interest in what you do. But at the same time, if you start something and you secretly deep down know you want something out of it, you need to optimize it in a way that you will both achieve and enjoy it. And like, flow is the way to go. Like, if you design your life in a way where you actually do work that feels meaningful to you, you will be able to get the best of the worlds, like achieving and actually enjoying the work. The way I think about it is just, like making a balance between actually enjoying it and getting results from it. Like, for example, with the channel, I absolutely love recording videos, but obviously I also have an external goal, and the external goal is just, getting people to actually understand the message and to transmit something. So the way I think about it is, I will never record something that no one would watch, because this is what people recommend you to do, just create for yourself, and this seems to make sense. But deep now, we all know that we also want to have an impact. Like, if no one is watching you, you can't have an impact. So the way I think about it is not I'll just ignore passion like some more entrepreneur style thinkers usually think. Like, I will ignore what I love and I will just do what it takes. This makes sense, but I try to do a little bit of balance between those. I will make videos that I both enjoy recording and that also people enjoy watching, and this way I get the best of both of the worlds. Like, I'm doing something I like, but at the same time it's getting traction. I'm making impact, and I think it goes like for everything else. Like, if you like training in the gym, you might make it a bit of a mix between what is important to you. You really need to have clarity on what you actually want, on the kind of life you want to be living, both from a materialistic perspective and also from a spiritual perspective. You need to start living right now as if your life were perfect, but at the same time you need to go towards the vision of your life that you have for yourself.
Oh, great. I actually talked to this entrepreneur, and he was thinking about that most people, especially young people, are just going after the passion, not really caring about the sense of purpose, that everybody is like, oh, this job is crazy, you should drop out of everything and do this and do that. And he was that perspective that, like as you said, you can be so arrogant, and there are people who, kind of hate their job, but it is made and they are living, for the weekends and for their hobbies. And with the job, they are just, feeding their family, paying their bills, and that is not wrong. That there isn't anything wrong with it. I've heard this thing with Chris Williamson from one podcast that, we saw. Imagine and think that everybody who has a family and job and hobbies should just quit everything and go do this thing. But I don't think there's anything bad about just working with less passion for your work. But honestly, it is much better to really care about your work and making an impact and working hard on it, and that you have money, especially with this thing. I have it like that. And even in my case with podcast, like I really love recording and talking to everybody and asking questions. It is just the best part. It always like gives me the energy, gives me like a good vibe, and it's a better day when I have a podcast. But reaching out to people, sending emails, sending DMs is the most annoying thing. But it's like I'm willing to endure it because I love podcasting so much. It is kinda that way for me too. And with that, there's this big thing with consistency and discipline. And do you think they are as important for success as they used to be, or as people saying they are?
In this case, I think they are super important, but like we were talking about in terms of hours and just sweating for the work, they do matter. But if you think they will give you a good life by just by themselves, you are naive, I think, because like you need discipline, because when you're starting something, if you don't force yourself to start that thing, you will never start it. Like we all know this. You can't get yourself doing something if you don't push yourself just a little. But we all know, like if everyone who goes to the gym, we all know that after a year or 2 years, if you have to force yourself to go to the gym, you did something wrong. Like you need to be enjoying at a certain point the activity. Like if you've done something for enough time, you shouldn't be needing discipline every day. You might need it on the wrong days, but if you actually internalize the activity, it will just make sense to do it without the discipline. So I think discipline is just an instrument to actually achieve what you want. In a video I said that, and what I mean is simply, some people make discipline their whole life. Like they don't use discipline as an instrument to actually achieve the vision of the life they want, but they just go with this Gauguin style, or I'm gonna work harder just for the sake of working harder, but they forget the reason why they've started working harder. You always need to keep in mind what's the reason behind everything you do. You can be, random or unaware about these things. So the way I think about discipline is like, I only see it as an instrument, and if I ever make my lifestyle around discipline, then it's no more an instrument. It's the goal, but the real goal, remember, is the life you're trying to build. And like with consistency, I think it's also very important. But as we said a couple of minutes ago, if you are consistent on stuff that you both don't like and also doesn't bring you nearer to the vision, then why are you doing it? Like if you notice something you're doing and you're being very consistent about it, that does not bring you nearer to where you want to go, you have no duty to keep doing it. So be consistent, be disciplined, but be disciplined only as an instrument to get nearer to where you want to go, and be consistent only if it helps you getting nearer to where you want to go. This is the rule I think about this.
Yeah, that's really good, and it helped even me because right now I have this writing thing I do on Substack, and one of my bigger newsletters I want to write is about discipline. And one of the big questions was if it's worth it, if it's the pain of doing this every day and kind of be just putting yourself through that worth it for the end result. And that kind of answered my question, because you don't need if you need discipline every single day and it is so hard and painful, who knows if it is the right thing or if you're doing something wrong. But when it goes to yes, it is easier to just be on your phone and be on your couch, but for me it is probably even more painful every time this happens, that the regret, the just lost potential, you can just feel it. And at the end of your life, probably you will more regret that you didn't endure the pain that wasn't even that hard, then rather than just being lazy your whole life and lost in your potential. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about in terms of discipline and what's about that. Okay, and what do you think about dopamine detox and dopamine detoxes?
I think the concept behind dopamine detox is actually very good, but I just don't like the way people call it like dopamine detox, because like since I come from a more of a neuroscientific approach because I study psychobiology in uni. I just have to remind people that you can't detox from dopamine, and if you did, like when you have addicts who are very addicted to something like cocaine, they get to a certain point in some rare cases of really bad addiction where they physically can't move because they are dopamine depleted, so they don't have dopamine going on in their brain. And so the thing is, dopamine detox does help, but you don't have to think about it like a detox. It's just about dopamine changing the places where you get your dopamine from, and then the concept behind it makes so much sense, and I recommend this to people. I just don't like it to call it dopamine detox, because people then start to think that dopamine is like about pleasure, but dopamine is 100% about motivation, getting to things, being in a place, and dopamine is just the force that makes sure that you act in the direction to get something else. And this might be scrolling, or this might be building something for yourself. It just depends on what you choose to do. So then, yeah, it makes absolutely sense to do a dopamine detox. Just I don't like to call it that way. And the way I go about it is just changing the sources of your dopamine. And as I told you, you don't even need to completely stop consuming, but at least have your day divided in parts, like the first part you create, or the latest part you create, and in some other part you let stuff getting through you. You might even consume just a bit. I think it makes sense to make a complete dopamine detox if you have a really bad addiction with your phone or social media. Then it makes absolutely sense, but if in case you are not really addicted and you just feel a lack of clarity, just changing your sources will make a good job.
Yeah, we need to come up with some good name that we can change it rather than using dopamine detox. And we need to advertise it more. And yeah, with dopamine detoxes, I realized this after reading this book called Dolls from this author, and they were saying about dopamine, and then I realized, you don't actually just kill every dopamine source and you just are without dopamine. It is that you need dopamine to actually live, and you can't just kind of cut it out of your life. And then I realized it more. So yes, the name can be misleading.
Yeah.
but it was from a friend I have, another podcaster. It can be really it can really change somebody's life. And why do you think is that you change your dopamine resource and all of a sudden that everything within your life becomes better?
Because like I told you, dopamine is not like people think about it, like the molecule of pleasure. We actually release the dopamine when we are in the pursuit of something. So then it makes sense that when you change, when your dopamine is released during your days, it literally changes the way in which you pursue literally everything, from eating something to literally anything you can imagine is mediated by dopamine. I wouldn't be talking with you right now because I wouldn't feel the need, the reason why for doing this if I hadn't the optimal level of dopamine. And the other reason why it makes more sense is we live in a world that is like it doesn't evolutionary make sense for our brains, because we have everything available at us, like literally everything in every single moment of our days. We can eat whatever we like and how much of it we like. We can consume like literally media from the other part of the planet in every single second, and our brains have evolved our dopamine system has evolved for environments where we hadn't access to so much stuff. So the reason why it's so revolutionary in people's lives is because it puts you into a more in a state, in a place, in an environment, in a life that makes more sense for your evolution as a human being. Like, our dopamine system has evolved for just making sure we pursued things that mattered for our survival. Like, if I hadn't dopamine, I wouldn't be hunting because I wouldn't feel the need and I would die of hunger. Like, it would be crazy. But nowadays we don't have that problem. We go to the supermarket, but then we have so much food that we still have the dopamine that makes us desire these things, but these things might not be what we need in order to be happy. So I don't think dopamine makes us happy, but it's the prerequisite in order for us to be happy. It's also actually the reason why we can't be 100% happy long term, because every time you achieve something, the dopamine tells you to go take something else that is better than that. So paradoxically, even if you optimize dopamine, you will never feel completely satisfied out of dopamine. For that, you need purpose, you need things that go way beyond dopamine, and still neuroscientific, but more complex than this. But I think that the biggest impact is it changes how we pursue things. And in the end, life is just about pursuing ideals or things or directions, people, like anything.
Yeah. And with the dopamine thing, I've heard that most of my life I thought that dopamine kind of, when you end for example, some video on TikTok or some reel, or when you end some task you need to do, that's when the dopamine releases in your head. But I think I learned or read somewhere that it is just kind of releasing in your head as you're doing the activity, so you keep doing it, or even before. So I'm not sure. So I would ask you how it works and how it releases in your brain.
Yeah, most of it is actually released before or during the activity, but most of it, and it makes sense from a neuroscientific approach, it's before. And this also explains why it motivates us to do things. Like, if right now you hear the sound of a notification from your phone, you release dopamine. But why? Because dopamine is the molecule that your brain releases when there's an opportunity in the environment. So I will release dopamine not because I will feel the pleasure later to do the thing. It's not about pleasure, it predicts the pleasure that I could have from something. So you release most of it before, just because it has to motivate you to go there. If you hadn't the dopamine, you would hear the noise of the notification, but you wouldn't feel the need to go there. You might know that it's pleasant to actually check the notification, but you wouldn't have the drive to actually do it. And I think this is the best way to explain this. Dopamine is what moves you from a state to another one where you feel the need to do something.
And do you think that this thing called willpower and dopamine are like connected? Because as you go through the day, I think your dopamine levels, or how you call it, change, and at the end of the day you're less likely to go for a 5-mile run rather than in the morning. So
yeah, especially because, like, if you just have too many sources of dopamine, that especially the ones that are sort of artificial, like consuming like just anything that modernity has given us as humans, it's gonna be a lot harder to actually pursue hard things, because the release of dopamine you get from artificial activities is a lot higher if you're not used to it. If instead you build your days in a way where your days are mostly slow and you have slow activities for most of the day, and then you have some random burst of artificial dopamine, it's going to be a lot easier for you to actually feel motivated to do stuff. And of course it is completely related to willpower, and like, if your dopamine is not regulated in the correct way, you won't have willpower. But as I told you, like, willpower is something you need to cultivate, because if you have zero willpower, you will do absolutely nothing. But you can partially correct it through environmental optimization and just designing your life. Because even those who are very regulated on a dopamine level, like people who live a slow life, even me personally, I try to live a mostly slow life, but still I don't completely rely on willpower, like I told you, just because I think it's not the most rational approach. I use it only when it's an emergency case, but most of the time I am consistent with what I do simply because I have my life organized in a good way, if this makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And for example, when somebody's dopamine levels are kind of broken, or how do I say it, that they're too distracted and they kind of, they do their work, but they can't focus, and then they go scroll. What are, for example, the other activities besides work that can help with dopamine and training your brain in a better way?
I think the main thing is I have this philosophy that I call the philosophy of boring breaks, and I talk about this all the time on the channel because it makes so much sense. Like the best way to actually sort of train your brain, if we like to say it that way, is to just I don't want to say you need to stop scrolling in general, but at least stop scrolling in between your work sessions. Like if you finish working, and working is an activity that is low and it can even be boring sometimes, because sometimes you have to do boring things, and you immediately do something that is hyper stimulating like scrolling, you get a huge dopamine release, not from the work but from the consumption of scrolling. So in this case you will feel more demotivated when you come back working, and you actually won't feel the drive to keep working. So I have this philosophy that I call the boring breaks, simply because if you start having boring breaks, you won't feel the need to escape from the work. On the other hand, if you just do breaks that are hyper stimulating, you lose the motivation. If I finish working and I just stare at a wall or I just walk, it's gonna be much funnier to actually go back to my work, and I will have a bigger dopamine release from the work itself, because I will feel the drive to actually do what I'm doing. And the break will feel even boring. I wanna stop that break, and you get to a point where you actually are advanced in sort of the flow game. You actually live a life where you spend a lot of hours in a flow state, and in this case you even lose the need for breaks. Like I do need breaks when I'm doing something that I really hate and I can't enter the flow state. But if I'm doing something I'm really passionate about and I have 3 hours, I won't even do a break, just because then it won't make sense. But if you know, like you have to study something, like you have to do something you are not very passionate about, just make sure you finish and you don't scroll. And then once you have finished everything, you might do whatever you like. You can even scroll, watch Netflix, because at that point it doesn't matter.
It makes sense. I will definitely use this, because like it is like you will have, once you have boring breaks, you will have shorter breaks for sure. I think it works like that.
Yeah.
And one other thing, we like talk about how people can pick the right task to work on, and how to actually, it matters what they will focus on, and when they actually have those things, how they can work less on the thing that and achieve more.
I guess, like we were saying before, you need to be very observant, like in terms of the effects that your actions have on your life. Just you, before starting something, you never know what actually brings you results, what is important. But whenever you start a project or you start something, you need to act in different ways and to just see the consequences of your actions. You need to be looking at actions. You need to just fill your life with actions that have leverage, like Naval would say. And this simply means that you spend like an hour doing something, but the consequences are way bigger on your life. This is the kind of actions you want to be focusing on. And for example, like since we have already talked about content in general, what we do online with content is a great example for this. Like we record something and it might take 1 hour or even more, but then the consequences in a couple of years might be way bigger than this. Like how many people can watch it, how much enjoyment we get from this. You need to be looking at actions that have consequence is way bigger than the time you spend doing those. And once you do this, you have leverage. Then if you add flow state to leverage, you literally become, you beat every competition, because then you're literally designed to to conquer the world, because like you are so focused that you forget that the world exists, but at the same time you notice the world in terms of how much impact you're having. The only time you actually notice the outside when you're working is this going great? Am I doing good? Not in terms of me as a subject, because the ego goes to the background, but like seeing the direction I'm going in. And then if you combine those, I think you will know where to spend your energies. I try to spend my energies on things that both give me the results I want, and at the same time I enjoy doing. And if you combine those, like, so good.
And how do you think people can actually measure those right things? Because even with content example that people may do so many reels, but they do so many like changes and experiments and all of this and all of that, they don't even know how to measure it or what works, because we did so much and everything that we don't even know what works.
I think you need to define what success means for you in that specific realm. Like in talking about content, it might be views, but it also might be how much engagement you get from this, how many people reach out to you for asking stuff. So I think about it in a way where I wanna paradoxically do less, but every time I do something, I post something, I create something, I am very aware of the changes I'm making, and I'm just gonna observe the effects of these changes on the results. Like if you need to post less, you can post less, but then every time you post, you become aware of where you are improving. And when you reduce the amount of things you put out, it's easier to notice the effects, if this makes sense. So if you need to post less shorts, less reels, you might do it, but make it a rule for you. I try to make this a rule for me when I upload. I just a tiny thing every time I upload that I'm changing, and I'm gonna see if this has an effect. And if you don't see an effect of that thing, you might not stop it immediately. You might keep doing it for a couple of times, and if you see something, if you see an effect, you keep doing it. Otherwise, you don't. I think this is the real meaning of learning on a very basic approach, like not learning abstract stuff, but really basic stuff like growing, like these kind of things.
Yeah, and I think with the learning, it even helps that being aware with the content you're consuming and what works for you and the things you can try, that can really help, especially with the content side. And if it's okay, then I have some tweets from you that I really liked, and would want to know like what did you mean by them, and maybe go even deeper into them. So
yeah,
one of yours was most people are addicted to beginnings. Beginnings feel like hope. Endings require responsibility. Maturity is finishing.
Yeah, this one got actually inspired from my video I made not even a month ago. And what I was saying in the video is basically like everyone can start things, because like as we were talking about before, talking about dopamine, like when you haven't started anything, you feel novelty. And novelty is very highly related to dopamine, which is, like we have said, the motivator of our actions. So starting something feels like hope just because you've never tried it, and so it's completely new. You don't even know the hardship that it takes to actually get to a very high level at this pursuit. On the other hand, you can be mature only if you finish the projects, because finishing the projects requires something much more complex. It requires the dopamine, the motivation, like to actually do the thing. But once you have started doing something for hours, you realize how hard it actually is, because we only look at the final destination, but we don't look at the process. So maturity is finishing simply because everyone in the world, like literally you can notice this, everyone in the world can start projects, but really few people finish the projects. And the other thing I was thinking about is, like, you can have impact in the world. Like, I don't mean on a psychological internal level, but on the outside, on other people, only with what you finish. For example, if you start writing, if let's say we both start writing a book, like, you start the book, but then you notice it's hard, and then you stop writing the book, and then you start another one, and you keep doing this. And this might make sense because some of the projects you start don't deserve your attention. In some cases, it is wise to stop doing something because you realize it really doesn't make sense for you. But if you keep doing this for every single thing you do, the other person, which might be me or someone else, who just focused on the tiny thing and brought it to completion, even though it might not be the best book in the world, I might publish it and I might make some impact through it. But if you don't finish the book, no one will ever read it and it won't make impact. So this is what I always think about. Like, I want to start things because I am a very curious person, I have to admit this. I sometimes start books that I don't finish. I'm a human as well, but I try to make sure that most of the things I start, I bring them to completion. Unless it doesn't make sense for me, but it's really rare.
Yeah, with the finishing books, I can deeply relate to that. I have too many unfinished books, but we always say that there's another time when we will finish it. It will just be later. And right now, I have this philosophy that I will just get the thing I want from the book, then I don't need to read it all. But that's not a really good approach, but it sometimes works.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think this connects to it, that defining what is success for you and if you're willing to make those sacrifices and endure those things. And how do you think people can kind of know if it is worth for them, how they can define what is success, and maybe even what is success for you in this even content creation thing and with the intentions you have with your content, your YouTube channel?
I think, to be fair, my ideal recommendation would be, and this is something that people recommend, but I don't completely believe in it because I think it's too optimistic. It would be like, simply ignore what others told you to desire and just want what you actually want. But I think this is not completely true because, like, the concept of mimetic desire, like we desire things that we have seen other desiring, I think we can completely eliminate that from our lives. Like, we will always be desiring things that we have seen other desiring. You might become aware of that and you might remove a certain part of it, but I don't think it would be wise to completely try to remove mimetic desire just because it is impossible. So the way I go about it is, if I notice I have a goal and it's a materialistic goal, I might let it be in my mind, but I always couple it with an internal goal, which is also the distinction we were talking about between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Like, you need intrinsic motivation, of course, to enjoy something, but then it might come up, there also might be some external motivators in your life. It's still good. At least you need a sort of internal motivation before that. So the way I go about it, for example, with the channel or the content creation is, of course, it would be a lie to say that that views and these kind of metrics don't matter to me, because they matter, because in the end we are talking about humans. But the way I always think about it is like, the number of subscribers is not just a number, but it's the number of people I've actually helped. And the biggest motivator for me, and this is not completely intrinsic, but it is, I think, at least human, is like when I work with someone, or I do a call, or I receive a comment, or someone reaches out to me. It's just the best part about this job is just seeing the joy in their eyes or in their response. And I think this puts me and the ego outside of the equation. Like, I still want the normal metrics of success because everyone wants them. I think it would be foolish to not admit this. But if you couple this with a bigger drive, a bigger purpose and vision for what you do, you start to get out of the thing. Like, I think you will start, everyone will start this journey, like, with the need to achieve something external. But then once you do it for more than a year, I think that the change was after a year I've started doing this, I've noticed the real reason why I actually enjoy this is just seeing the joy around me, seeing the impact. And this might be still a sort of ego thing, but I think for the most part I've just put the ego outside of this. I just enjoy getting the views, but I see it just as a way of making impact. I think this will help some people who are in this game as well.
I agree. And especially even I started to do this kind of content creation side hustle things because of money, but then I kind of tried everything and fell in love with this craft that I actually started finding meaning, and actually the biggest rewards are, the comments of, your content really helped me with this, you inspired me and you helped me. Those are always at least the biggest rewards to me. And as you said, with the meaning and purpose, and actually a really interesting idea that, we seem to want what we see others that they want. That was really interesting. Another thing, do you think this kind of defining your purpose and your goals and what are you willing to sacrifice can help with the flow and the focus? Because we were talking about, it can be fun, you forget about the time, and how you get into it is, you kind of the distractions and other. But do you think it can help that you have a purpose and then you can get easier into flow?
I absolutely think that, and the only thing is maybe like when you are entering the flow, you might not completely think about the purpose. You might think just about the tiny goal that you have for the moment. I think this is what happens to me usually. I might work for an afternoon and I just have a very tiny goal. But then as soon as I finish the flow session, I get out of the flow. I've done a ton of stuff. I just think about the bigger purpose, and then it helps me so much the next time I'm entering flow, because as I told you, like the real purpose of flow as a state is to get yourself out of the equation. Like if you want to become the action you're doing, you need to get out of it. But to get out of it, you need a reason, a purpose that is bigger than you. So in this case, absolutely it matters a ton for flow, for focus, because if you're trying to focus on something and it's just about you, how big can you be in the universe? You're just a tiny particle. But like if you think about the fact, and this might be even if you believe in something divine, like it can be a god, it can be like a bigger mission that involves other people, your community. It really doesn't matter. I think the only thing that matters is finding something that is bigger than you, because then when you focus, you have responsibility on you. You feel the need to do it, to actually focus, because it's not just about you. You might die tomorrow, but the rest of the world might not die tomorrow, and then it acquires a way deeper meaning. But then once you are in the flow, you won't be thinking about that, because like we were talking about in the beginning of the podcast, like when you're in flow, you're not thinking about not even the bigger purpose. You will think about it once you have finished. Then the flow itself is just very, very strictly related to the task. But absolutely, you need purpose. I think you can't actually experience big focus if you don't have purpose.
That makes sense. Okay. Your real enemy is cognitive load, too many open loops, too many tabs. Simplify, systemize, eliminate. Clarity is a performance enhancer.
Like the idea behind this one is simply that, just like in our mind, the more content we have going on, the more ideas, the more concepts and thoughts, the harder it is for us to focus. In our laptop, the more tabs we have, the harder it is to focus. So this analogy literally works in biology. Like if you think about it, our cognitive energies, and this is something that people often don't think about, they are limited. Like in every single second we can perceive just a tiny bit of reality. So why filling your brain with so much stuff that you actually forget about what you were doing? I'm a huge believer in this philosophy of just simplifying your life so much that the only thing that matters is the goal in front of you. Like people ask me, how can I focus? Much easier. Like I just tell them, because it's a work that, it takes many hours of talking about this, but the lesson behind everything I do is just remove so much stuff that the only thing in front of you is what matters. Because at that point, you have no choice but to do what matters. And so this works with tabs on your laptop, but it also works in terms of literally anything you maintain in your life, even people. Like you have no duty to maintain everyone. You might choose, not in a sort of exchange approach, like I need people for a specific goal, but like if some people just, they make you feel bad all the time you see them, you have no need to keep them in your life. You have no duty to keep literally no one in your life and nothing in your life. You should keep what makes your life better. And this also works with content. And if mental energies are limited, it makes sense to remove so much that you just have the work in front of you.
Makes sense. And with the work and the focus that you have only the thing open and the only thing you can focus on, I want to touch on, does music, it is like, is it a stimulant? Is it something that it is better to work or deep focus in quiet, or are there any binaural beats or whatever is can advertise these days better for your focus, or is it just a kind of another distraction that we've cultivated?
I think it really depends on which level of focus you want to get to, because I think if we were talking about really, really deep state of focus, like a deep work or flow state, you actually, it's better to avoid music at all, because it would be some more things that your brain has to process. And if you actually want to get to a very high state of focus, you need less stuff for your brain to process and more stuff about the task to process. But I don't think music is bad in general. Like for some tasks, I might use music myself, even though I'm not a huge believer of music while working, because for some things you don't actually want to enter a flow state, but you just like a little bit of boost of dopamine when you're doing something, because you don't completely need all your energies. Like for shallow work, I would say music helps a ton, because if you actually don't like something and you don't have a ton of time, so you won't be able to enter a flow state, because you can't enter a flow state in a second. It takes a lot of time, actually some time to actually enter in the state. So in this case, I think you might use music in general. And talking about my binaural beats or white noise, it has been studied. It seems to exist some evidence that, especially white noise, because binaural beats have been studied as well, but I think the main one which has been proved to improve focus is white noise, because in the end it's not very different from the noise we hear in our environment. Like if you will easily enter a flow state like in nature, but then in nature you have white noise, which is the water flowing or stuff like that. So I think if you like white noise, use white noise. Binaural beats, they have to be, I think, not very musical, but just very flat. If they are flat, they might help you, but my recommendation is either silence or white noise when you're doing something and you actually want to enter a very a big state of focus. But when you're doing shallow work, I think there's no problem in having music. I sometimes listen to classical music when I'm doing shallow work, because I just have to do stuff that doesn't really require my energies for 30 minutes, and then I might use it.
Agreed. And I often find myself that when I want to focus and I kind of listen to some music, then I just find myself just vibing and singing to the music rather than focusing on the task. But as you said, with the kind of shallow work you do, especially for me, this like sending DMs and emails, it can really help and make it more enjoyable. And then I like even focusing on it more, it can help. Another one is, in the end, hours vanish. What remains is finished work. Build things that outlive your effort.
Yeah, this one was a mixture of like the concepts we have already talked about, which are leverage, and then fighting, sort of fighting the hustle culture concept, because like you can't achieve anything if you just say you will work 1 hour a day, because this doesn't make sense. But at the same time, people who optimize for increasing the hours they work and not for building something that actually matters to them, they are not doing themselves a favor. Like, this is the reason why I've written this tweet. Like, you need to optimize your life in a way where you might need to work more if you need, but it's not the goal. The goal is to achieve more. So if to achieve more, the only way you have is adding hours, you have a problem. You need to change where you're putting your energies on. Because like, if you're building a career where in order for you to earn more, you need to put more hours, I don't want to say it is slavery, but you are building a life where if you actually wanted more, you would need to put more hours. So I kind of stole this wisdom from Naval, because it makes much more sense. Like, I want to build a life where I can put myself out of the equation, because I've built something so much bigger than me that I don't want to say it doesn't depend on me, because of course it will depend on you. People who say like you can build a business and you are completely out of it, this is not completely true. You might not need to put more hours, but you will still be able to, you will still have the need, to put hours of yours into the business. But just make sure you haven't built it in a way where the only way to increase output is to increase input. You might, or better, you might create a business or a life where you increase input, not in terms of hours, but in terms of quality. This is a much better metric. Like, not hours you work, but the quality you produce every time you work. Because I can work 1 hour and produce stuff that is higher quality than someone working 10 hours, and I will achieve 10 times more, even though it doesn't seem fair. People will say it's not fair, but it's just how the biological aspect of life works, not even economical. Like, the quality of something matters a lot more than the time you spend doing it. And so this is the concept.
And as you said about the quality of the thing, and what do you think about the kind of quality quantity kind of metric? Like, what should people focus on when? Like, focus yes purely on the quality of the thing, or is it more of a first quantity than quality, or how do you think about it?
The way I think about it is like, first, in the first period of time, you both need to apply discipline and to actually have the quality high, because you have zero experience on the thing. So like, you start posting videos, like, you might spend more hours refining something, but I think it makes more sense to just randomly post and see how bad you are at doing it, so that you then feel the need to actually increase the quality. But for people who are advanced at something, I always say like, you not like work 1 hour a day, but you might need to work a little bit less just to improve the quality. And improving the quality doesn't always mean like when you're working. Another example I gave you before, which didn't seem to make sense, like in this kind of sense, but like when you sleep less in order to work more, what you're actually doing is increasing the quantity but decreasing the quality. Because like it's proved that when you work and you are sleep deprived, you produce less quality stuff. The quality of what you do is really lower. So I think it doesn't make sense to do things that increase your output but decrease the quality of the output. So you can do as much quantity as you like. It really doesn't matter to me. It's always better to do more. But the rule I give people is you do more only when you have mastered the quality you can master. Like, let's say I make a video that is not perfect, because perfection doesn't exist, but at the moment, comparing it to my ability level, it's a really good piece of content. If I then have time and motivation, I might increase the quantity as well, because there's really no reason to not do it. Like, it would be dishonest for me to say like, you don't need quantity. You absolutely need it, because anyone who has succeeded has improved the quantity as well, but only do it when you have the quality in place. unless you have just studied out something, and in this case you just need the quantity.
Yeah, so it is like, yes, you should do more of it, but only if you can sustain the level of quality that it should
Exactly.
have.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you said that perfectionism, like, or something perfect, doesn't exist, and if some people like, yes, I have, and right now I did some of it. I know what works. I know what kind of doesn't work, but my perfectionism doesn't let me to post more because I know how many just flaws I have. What advice would you have on that? On that?
Could you repeat the question because I lost some of it?
Yeah, of course that. How should people deal with the perfectionism when they did some quantity first? They know what's working and kind of what's not. They know where should they improve, and that maybe they should do more. But their perfectionism doesn't let them to improve, and it doesn't let them to if, because they see all of those flaws and they just kind of don't post it because they say that yeah, like this is not enough, I'm not good enough, and for example next time I will do it better, or it takes some more time.
I think the rational advice here would be like focus on the learning process, like we were saying before. But I know this actually can be hard, and like I've experienced this too. Like when you actually don't really admire the quality of what you're doing, it's actually hard to not notice it. But the thing I always like to imagine, and I think this might be more helpful, is like how am I gonna look at this content in a year from now? And then I have expanded the view so much that it really doesn't matter of what I'm uploading right now, even though I seem foolish. Like if you think about 1 year from now, how will you think about this? You will be grateful for having posted the clip where you just were cringe. I just expand my perspective so much that it really doesn't even bother me. And this is not to say that you shouldn't just try to be present in the process. You should, but when you catch yourself just thinking about in a too much of a perfectionist approach, just think about you will be laughing in a year about this, about how much you worried, and then you have everything you want. So this is the way I think about it. Like if you can focus on the process of learning, if you just can switch your mind and say I'm gonna focus on learning, and it works for you, that's fine. If it doesn't work, I have this other technique, and you just might try it. I think it makes more sense for our mind.
I think it surely does, and especially I come up with this kind of idea that having like being perfectionist or being like high standard, but with deadlines. That yes, I need to do this, but till this extended period of time, and then I just need to post it. I will not overthink it more and more. I will just do my best to, and then on that day, for example, with the post example, I will post it. Like no matter if I think it has this flaw. Of course, it has to be some average standard that yes, I will not just post a raw clip, but with the things that I care about or I think I should improve. If it's not there yet, or I think it's not there yet, I will still post it. And that's kind of that mindset I've had for this time.
Makes sense. And also I would say that actually entering a flow state, if you're constantly judging yourself, is impossible, because like we were saying, if your ego is inside of the equation and you're just thinking about yourself while recording, you won't record well. And we all know this, because like right now we are talking, but we are not being aware of ourselves. Otherwise we will be just making mistakes all the time. Like we are in sort of a flow state in this moment because we're not thinking about ourselves, paradoxically. And so you need to do the same like with recording in general. Like you need to get yourself out of the equation, and this sometimes means you don't judge yourself, but then once you have finished you might judge yourself and see, okay, next time I might do this better, and then you do it better than the next time. But during the act of doing it, you don't need to judge yourself. It's counterintuitive, but it actually makes you way worse. You just need to do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on this because especially when recording this and I start to be aware of myself and what I'm talking, I kind of start sounding like a robot that, yes, what am I talking about? And I heard this one with writing, that when you write, you can just kind of write and edit your writing at the same time. You just first need to write, you just end the act of creativity, get to flow state, and then you will you can enter the edit stage when you can just kind of rip out your writing, or how can I say better than that? So I absolutely agree, and actually makes you worse. I know that from experience. Okay, then there's this new trend online that is about Alicia Liu, this Olympic skater, really cool. She won an Olympic medal, and she had some interviews before and after, and she absolutely popped out on everybody's For You page. She's everywhere. She has a lot of now commercials and a lot of sponsors, even I think Lucky Charms, which is kind of ironic. And I wanted to kind of think about, or what is your opinion on this? Kind of have fun, care about the thing, you don't need to stress about winning or losing, and how it affects productivity even from maybe the neuroscientific way, or just in that.
Yeah, I think this is a very wise approach. Like, because the usual way we think about focus and just productivity and just winning, we think about it like winning, like you win if you do those. But as soon as you say win, there's the ego, there's the person doing it, and then it all becomes about you. But every great performer knows it. It's not like you don't need to have an ego, but when you're doing the thing, you need to be out of it. Like, you need to actually dance to do the thing, like in the sport she was doing. And I think it works the same for all of us, for whatever we do. Like, you might start doing something and say you want to win in that realm, but like the long-term approach that makes more sense is just getting the words winning and losing out of the way, because they mislead you. They make it all about you, and then if it's all about you, it's not more about what you're actually building. If you only focus about what you're building, and you also try to have fun in the process, because it's gonna be hard sometimes. Sometimes you will have moments where it won't be funny. We all know this, but if most of the times you're just having fun because you're not being too you're not over judging yourself, everything you do, like we were saying before. I think her approach makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it is optimistic because there are moments when you won't be able to do this. But I think even if you get the word to win out of your mind, it will help you. Because I say this being a competitive person. Like, I don't want to say I'm not a competitive, but I'm trying to gradually shift what competition means to me. Just putting myself out of the game and just enjoying the game itself. And then you get into a sort of more infinite game. Like, it's not just about winning or losing, it's just about participating in the game and improving, which is sort of winning, but it's not about being better than someone. It's just about mastering the game for the sake of mastering the game, because you truly enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree with this, because kinda, especially there are many videos about Alicia Liu and her new perspective, and why is it so good that you kind of, when you're working and you kind of working alone, then you have a better chance to actually enjoy what you're working on. So even entering into the flow state can be really easier. And as you said, with that, you will kind of care less about yourself, or the ego will be less in the equation of the whole thing. Like, I wanted to get a little back to it. Do you think that this flow and just being in this flow is kind of a spiritual thing even, that kind of you lose the track of yourself and what you need to do, what you should do, what is losing, what is winning?
Yeah, like it might feel like a spiritual experience, but I wouldn't say like during the flow. But after it, you will absolutely feel something that is spiritual, because every religion actually tried to do only this, to get yourself out of the game and to just think about something bigger. So yeah, when you're in the flow, you won't think about yourself, and obviously once you finish, you ask yourself, how was this possible? I want to feel this again. And then you crave the state, like, simply because paradoxically you feel the most alive when it's not about you. And then yeah, you also get the concept of winning out of your head, because it's not that you don't care about winning, because like, think of an athlete who's running, who's doing something. In the moment he doesn't care about winning, but when he has finished, he actually cares about winning. If he gets the medal, he's super happy. No one that doesn't do that. We are humans. We love winning, but it's just about how much do you think about winning and in which moments. Because if while you're doing something you think about winning, you can't enter flow. Like, for example, the example I'll make, when I'm writing something, if I ever catch myself thinking, oh, this might be good, this might do great, I'm not in a flow state in this moment, because I'm thinking about not just about the task, I'm thinking about the final result I'm getting in a couple of years of doing something. But this doesn't make sense during the act. It makes sense only once I've finished. And then you just admit you're a human and you like winning. We all love winning, but do it afterwards. So you will feel this experience of flow, where you will feel so much more alive.
Agreed on that. Yes, you can you start craving once you get into the flow state more and more. And as you said, you are studying psychobiology at uni, and I would wanted to know that what it taught you about productivity, discipline, flow state, that isn't pretty much kind of thought on the internet, or most people don't know, that can be pretty essential to somebody's productivity or performance.
I might have someone, but it's something that people know on a conscious level, but I think they can't explain it. They don't know the mechanisms, and I think the mechanisms are interesting. And this is simply sleep, because like, everyone knows that sleeping is fundamental, but they don't actually know on a neuroscientific level what this has to do with discipline. So I might touch on that very briefly. Like, basically, when you are sleep deprived, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that, I don't want to say the rational part of your brain, because it doesn't make sense. It's way too simplistic, but like, it's the part of the brain that puts order inside of the brain, and it also helps calm down other areas of the brain that are more related to emotions, like the amygdala. Like, when you're sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex is less able to control the amygdala, which is the fear-related center of the brain and the irrational emotions part of the brain. So I'm just simplifying a lot, but like, when you're sleep deprived, you have this switch, and so you are much less able to control your impulses. And it also has to do, sleep deprivation, with dopamine and cortisol. Like, dopamine is what we were talking about, like the motivator. Sleep deprivation changes the dopamine sensitivity, which means you resist less to temptations. Like, when you're sleep deprived, and you can notice this too, Like if you've slept 5 hours for a long period of time, it's way harder to resist scrolling or consuming or just junk food or stuff like that, because your brain is literally in a state where it's hard to resist those. Also, your prefrontal cortex struggles to stop those. And the last one is also cortisol. Like cortisol is just the stress hormone, and if you are all of these things coupled with a high stress for a long period of time, you won't be able to be disciplined, to even be happy, I would say, because you will just feel random impulses and you will just fall for them all the time. And I said sleep just because everyone knows that sleep is important, but since people don't know, I think they just say, oh, it doesn't actually matter, I can live without it, but it's actually not how it works. It's so important. Like, you can't have a successful life long term if you're sleep deprived. You might do short periods of time, I agree on that, but it doesn't make sense. It's just the greatest performance enhancer, like they say nowadays.
Agreed. But I think sleep depression especially comes with students, and you study psychobiology, which I can only imagine how hard it can be. And you seem to really, care about the sleep, and you even have your own YouTube channel and you're doing this thing online. How do you personally manage your time and your day so you can have enough sleep? Because there's this joke that doctors don't even know what is sleep, and architecture, like 3 hours a day or some joke going on. And yeah, like, how can people improve it?
I think it's just, in my case, I'm very ruthless with my time. I try to not waste any of it, but it doesn't mean that I fill every single moment of my day with stuff just because I have to also get the sleep done. I just, as I told you, I start my days and I try to not consume, and I create something. And that little thing I create, I make sure it has so much impact that I don't need to create for more hours during the day. I might need to edit a video, like if I've made a script, I might need to edit it, like to do something else. But I make sure that the high leverage task of the day, which was creating or which was doing something else, is done, and then I just do the rest in terms of priority. People do to-do lists, and I do it too, but I don't think about just how many things I have to do. I just think about the priorities of those. Like, I try to manage everything in this way. With studying, I have a lot of stuff to study, but I might decide to skip a lesson sometimes because it makes more sense to have a whole morning doing something or studying something, and it will make more sense for me. So I'm ruthless about it. I don't think it in the traditional way. I say no to anything that will interrupt the flow. And if I can enter the flow, I don't need so many hours, because like if I do 3 hours and I'm hyper focused, I don't need to keep working the whole night. Like, this is the goal that people should strive to not working, like, because you have to work, but do not have to get to your evenings where you still have to do stuff. So if this costs you saying no to something, just say no, so that in the evening you will have free time. And in fact, not always, but it sometimes happens to me to have some free time, at least half an hour in the evening, and so I can just go to sleep and have my 8 hours of sleep. I think people should just, if they can, because not everyone can. I'm lucky to be able to do so because I don't have a 9-to-5 job that forces me to wake up at very very early, or to do things in a specific way. Since I have this freedom, if you have this freedom as a human being, be grateful and use it. This is what I tell to people, because like you are in school right now, I can understand, like, you absolutely need to go to every single lesson, and this obviously makes it harder for you to actually enter flow, to have some hours completely for you. But if you can, this is the highest leverage approach.
Yeah. School is my easier 9 to 5, let's say. But for me, it's really important, especially in the mornings, to have my hours for working on the most important tasks and kind of making my time in the morning very very to myself, and if anything interrupts me, I'm just not now. It's just kind of my time. I absolutely get that. And yeah, even if your sleep costs sometimes not scrolling for an hour or being a little bit more tired or saying no to something, I think it's worth it. And as you said, I think one of the most important thing is managing your time and managing your your energy levels. Let's say it like that. When you're the most productive and the least productive. And one of the last things I wanted to touch on is your stories and your story and how did you get into YouTube and helping entrepreneurs and all of that stuff.
It actually, the flow thing started way before the idea of starting a brand. I've read the famous book by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi that is called Flow, the psychology of the optimal experience, and he was the guy who actually, I don't want to say invented the term, but yeah, he invented the term, and it was something that people knew about. Like you could be immersed in something, but this guy came and just made a science for it. So I read the book and I just got obsessed with it, and even before starting the brand and so on. And 2 years ago, I started making content, but I was not focused on flow actually. I started on a more psychological, general lens, because since I study a sort of psychology with some biology, like it made sense for me to do this kind of stuff. But then, after a year of content creation, I've realized that the thing I was most passionate about, first of all, and also the thing that people needed the most was focus, because we live in a distracted world. You don't need a genius to notice that. And so I just realized this made so much sense. Like I loved it, and it also had impact on people. And so this was the story. In the beginning, I just started posting on that, and then it also became like doing calls and coaching people. And this it didn't start like that. I've always had the passion for flow as a state, as a science, but it's actually become my side hustle, or my just passion for the free time in just the last year, I would say.
Last year, okay. And I think you're the first person that actually said his name right, so pretty cool on that. And I wanted to know more about. Of course, I'm in the YouTube space, and what do you think about long form content? Because I know we know you do small tweets on X, but how do you think about the long form content? And do you think it's going to be even more popular or the new meta in the future?
I think people are starting to realize, they have been starting to realize recently, that you can watch as many shorts as you like, but you don't feel a really deep emotional connection with the creator. So I think short content will never disappear, because we are dopamine creatures nowadays. We just love the tiny bit of stimulation that you get from short form. But I think people are starting to realize that watching a podcast like this one, like spending a lot of time, you just get more out of the creators. You really interact with them in a much more human way. So I think they will always keep existing, both ones. But I think the way to go, if you actually want to build a following of people who actually value you, is to do long form content in a way like this one, like we have done. In fact, I'm grateful for you bringing me in, just talking naturally, because humans crave connection. You might think that you go on YouTube for information, but in the end, what I think as a creator myself is just people want to resonate with something that goes way beyond information. It's emotions. And so you can watch a short, or you can read a short tweet, but you won't get that. You need longer content. I absolutely think that.
Agreed on that. And how do you think about kind of getting the people you kind of your fandom you gained on X to then your YouTube channel, or is it more just if they consume enough of my short form content and I kind of become more valuable to them, that they know they get value from me, they will automatically just kind of get more into the YouTube stuff?
I think it can work in all the ways you can imagine. I don't get a lot of traction for the YouTube from X because I think not many people want to go from like engaging on X and to just consuming video. But sometimes it happens that people have only read my content and they wanna give it a voice. Like I always think about this. Like when you write something, or even when you're an author, you write books. People just love to hear your voice, and it doesn't have to be good sounding. This is not what I mean. I'm just saying, as humans, we love to assign a physical voice, a face to the words we read. So it can work that way, but sometimes it even goes the other way. Like someone watches the video and then goes on X. I think they complete each other. I think everyone should do both, just because people love to assign a voice to physical words, to written words, sorry.
Yeah, great. I think this was the last one question. Of course, we can do more, but the time is up, and I just wanted to thank you that you came on this podcast. You really helped me even with my personal stuff and with the flow. I will surely implement some of your advice you gave here, and yes, I want to give thanks to people watching this, that they watch till the end, and hope we see each other in the next one, and hope we someday even we can do a podcast, even maybe in person. Would be cool.
I really hope this. It was a pleasure. Thank you.